All right, sorry about that, everyone on Zoom. Okay, we're getting audio, and we're going to record this session shortly. So if any of your friends or anybody else in P1 needs to see it, I know both of them are on a Thursday. So if you have a class at this time, you won't be able to get to it. But please reach out to us. We'll have our contact information in the slide deck, and also. So you email us, and also the recordings. Check out the recordings if there's some general questions, because essentially that's what today is a general overview of everything. So my name is Maxwell Schaefer. For those of you on the Zoom and those of us in here who don't know me, I am the technical director for FVASA, which is the Film Video Student Association, Animation Student Association. And so today, like I said, we're going to go over a general workflow that should prepare you pretty well. It might not include every button you need to press to get your film, but it gives a general overview of what you guys are going to need to do to submit your film the day before reading day, and then ultimately make sure it's going to play back correctly in the theater. With me, and I've just my phone set up because my speaker's not working, but this is Snow and Lily as well.
Hi, nice to meet you. Hi guys, welcome to the Screenings Workshop. I'm Michelle Snow. I'm the Film Video Animation Student Association President. Oh, and I'm Lily. I'm the communication.
Cool. All right. And hopefully my slideshow is working. So like I said, today we're going to be going over what is required to screen, the two options that we have available to you, and what do you guys have to plan for as you either start to finish up your edits for some of the more advanced years that have already shot, and how to start to think about what your final display is going to be if you haven't shot, if you're either shooting later this semester, like P1 or some of the radicals or fictions and stuff like that. Next slide. What is SOFA screenings? This is more for people who have not been to screenings before, but they are the end of the semester showcase of all the films. The fall is a lot smaller than the spring. The spring gets about 150 films and is usually like Thursday to Sunday, so 4 or 5 days typically. Whereas the fall, we planned for 4 days, but in my experience, it's only ever been 3.5-ish days. It's about 100 films and 20 presentations. So a lot of professors have requirements to go to a certain amount of screenings. I know my P1 did. So like make sure you're checking in with them. We're not in charge of keeping track of that stuff, but it is a great time. It is a great time to see in progress capstones for the fourth years. It's a great time to get to know the creative styles of the production one students for us older students. And overall, it's a great time. We have a red carpet theme, so everybody can dress up like they will when you all win Oscars in the future, or Emmys. We at RIT and at SOFA promote professional practices. That's been a huge initiative of David Long, who's one of the people who coordinates screenings, and especially since we've gotten the Wegmans Theater and the color correction and sound mix suites at Magic, we conform to digital cinema initiatives, which are professional practices, and SMPTE standards, which is the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers. We offer two workflows based on those standards. One of them is digital cinema or digital cinema packages, and one is video. Video is the most familiar one. That's your MP4 files, your MOV files, stuff that you can just play back on your phone right after taking it, or you can view it right out of the camera. DCPs and digital cinema packages are a lot different. They are image sequences, which means that they have a lot more information. They're a lot higher quality, but they're a lot more intensive, and you have to make sure you plan for them prior to shooting. So they're a little bit harder. We typically recommend you younger students. So P1, I think P2 is a little bit different, but P1, P2, maybe some radicals, maybe some fictions, do a tier 1 submission, and tier 2 submission, which is the digital cinema, would be your fictions, your capstones, and anything that you want to do that's goes a little bit beyond. Video, we limit you in terms of resolution, which we'll get into, resolution, color space, sound quality, stuff like that. DCPs, you really can go the entire span. You can span the gamut of anything you want to do creative, but it's a lot harder because you do have to plan for it. And we'll get into those distinctions. These next two things are some of the most important things to pay attention to are our naming conventions. So we'll get into submissions in a little bit, but so everybody has to submit an MP4 regardless of which workflow you're going through. Make sure you put your last name, underscore your film name, month, day, year. This gets important. The date especially gets important if we have people who have the same last name. If we have sometimes there's similar film names. So make sure that's the standard for capstones. And because you guys are doing work in progress, make sure there's an underscore work in progress, a WIP. So that way in the spring we can see which file is which. We've had some issues in the past where the naming convention wasn't followed, there wasn't a date included, and we couldn't tell the difference between your guys' films. So make sure the work in progress is appended on your MP4 file. So your screening, this is the screenings process kind of workflow, and let me move the captions down. So pre-production is the stage you guys should all be in if you're in, I think, P1, because I don't think P1 has shot yet this weekend. Okay. So P1 hasn't shot. You should be in pre-production right now. A lot of films are probably done with even production. So regardless of where you are along the pre-production production standard, where FVASA comes in and where you guys got to start conforming to our standards is in the post-production, QC, and submission stage. Which we put the pre-production. If you're planning on doing something more creative, make sure you plan for it there and make sure you follow what you planned while shooting. In post-production, that's where you're going to be doing your sound and picture quality. So make sure those are conformed. For QC and submission, QC is quality check or quality control, either one. I get that question a lot. Like, what is QC? But make sure it's exported correctly. Then you can quality check it with me or with one of the other officers in the theater. And then finally, you can submit and sign up on the day before reading day. Again, things to consider are picture format, like I said, and sound format. Sorry, I just got the Discord message, like the notification popped up. Anyway, picture format, resolution, and aspect ratio. So you can have 4K with a 239 aspect ratio, your widescreen aspect ratio, or a 185 or a 178, which is 16:9. Or you can go down to 2K. Again, we'll go into that in a minute. Make sure you're shooting got a consistent frame rate, or if you are, you're at least exporting at a consistent frame rate. Sound format, you must export at minimum two soundtrack, two a left and a right. So it's what do we call that? Not dual mono. Stereo, yeah. So stereo sound. We can't accept mono audio at all. It will break our systems. So while we're getting the screenings ready, we won't. If we get a mono audio file, we can't do anything with it. And we have safeguards in place to try to catch you before you submit a mono audio file, but we don't always get everyone. If your film is mono, just export a dual mono file. So the left and the right channel are going to be exactly the same, but make sure there are two channels. And also make sure when you're doing that, you QC for sound levels, because if you double the amount of audio and you're not paying attention, sometimes it'll just double the audio and you'll start to peak and stuff, but we'll get into that as well. You must include an audio track. So there's been some films in the past that have been completely silent, and that's totally fine. Like we're here to support whatever creatively, but on the technical side, we need at least an empty audio file. So even if there's no change in pitch, there's no sound whatsoever, we do need those sound. Otherwise, it'll cause a failure in our system, and we're going to have to work with you if we're allowed to. Sometimes we're not allowed to work with you after you submitted. Here are the basics of screenings. Like I said, tier 1 is video and tier 2 is digital cinema. You have one option if you're submitting a tier 1, and that's 1920 by 1080p. That's HD. You can have different frame rates. You can do the ones that are listed, which are drop frame 24, regular 24, drop frame 30, and 30. Again, you must do 2-channel stereo, and your submission is going to be an MP4 file, not an MOV, not anything other than an MP4 file. Why that is because tier 1 is harder it's easier on you guys. So if you guys are just starting out in the film industry and you just need to get your content on that projector, that's totally fine. We would rather you guys thinking creatively than thinking about all the technical stuff. So we do all the work to get it to work in the projector, as long as you submit it as an MP4 file. If you're in those upper classes or you're really ambitious, as a P1 student, we've had a couple, you can submit a digital cinema file, and that's where you really can get creative with the amount of options you have. You can do 2K, 4K resolutions with scope and flat, so widescreen and slightly less widescreen, as well as you can, of course, do any letterboxing and stuff to get like unconventional frame formats. But either way, the DCPs, the digital cinema packages, are going to be the way to go for some of the more creative stuff. That being said, you can only do 24 frames per second. That's a standard, and we have to conform to those standards. But you can also do stereo, 5.1 surround and 7.1 surround, which are things you can do if you have access to the Sound Mix Theater. Either I think we can do 7.1 upstairs in Magic, and I think 5.1 downstairs, but Soundcrafter might be able to correct me on that. But so if you have access to those spaces, then you can do that. What you'll submit for the DCP, it is a DCP, and you'll also send us an MP4 file just as a backup for us, because sometimes the DCP can fail, or we'll notice something about it and we'll ask you, hey, there's an issue with your DCP. Would you rather us just play your tier 1 file? So like I said at the beginning, everybody submits an MP4 video file, and the tier 2 will use your DCP if you submit it. Does anybody have any questions? Starting out, I know it was probably a lot of information, but I tried to, yeah. Cool. All right. Like I said, what should you use? This is a good diagram. Typically, we recommend that first year P1 and class reels. For TAs, if there's any TAs watching this, we really need tier 1, but we'll work with your professors, because the submissions for those get a little weird. Workshop films, how much of Magic and Sofa Spaces did you take advantage of? Did you grade on the projector? Did you go into the Sound Mix Theater? That'll determine whether you want to submit tier 1 or tier 2. Capstones, at that point, we really encourage you to submit tier 2, just because you've learned so much at that point that it's something that my guess is all of you are already planning on doing. For surround sound, however, that has to be tier 2, because there are no formats that support surround, or at least our workflows don't support surround sound in an MP4 file. Here's what you should get sooner. All right. We have Wegmans Theater picture formats. That's a set 16 by 9 with the 2 different HD standards, which are 1920 by 1080 and 1280 by 720. And you can do all those frame rates. That's the area that's going to show on screen, and I'll, with the next couple slides, like overlay the different areas. This is flat. It widens it a little bit and is 185. This is your digital cinema tier 2 workflow. So you can get a little bit wider, 2K and nearly 4K by 2160. So 3998 by 2160 for flat. This will fill the screen. If you've never been in Wegmans, or if you've only seen like laptops or like professors' presentations, what you'll notice is there's a small band of white, like extra screen area. If you guys are submitting tier 1, that white will still be present. But if you decide to submit tier 2, that'll go away for the cropped in version. Scope, we open the curtains for you and you get to take advantage of the entire projector space. This is only, again, when we only open the curtains for tier 2. And there's, again, 2 more standards for 2K and 4K. So here is the main difference between tier 1 and tier 2. Let's say you want to do a widescreen film, so a 2:3:9 aspect ratio. You still have to give us a 16:9 file, which means you have to letterbox on the top and bottom if you're submitting tier 1. That being said, if you decide to submit tier 2, you get all that extra space. We open the curtain for you. So it does get a little bit more impressive, but if you're just, again, like we said, if you don't want to have to worry about all that, we can still play your film at any aspect ratio for tier 1, as long as the file is submitted as a 1920 by 1080 with letterboxing or pillar boxing. Speaking of pillar boxing, that's how you're going to get your 4:3 aspect ratio and any other really creative one, like 1:1 or stuff like that. But make sure, again, your timeline uses one of our SOFA's presets. The presets will be on all the Media Encoder and Premiere Pro and all those. But make sure you're letterboxing correct or pillar boxing correctly. These are the sound formats. Again, stereo 2 channels, 5.1 is 6 channels, and 7.1 is 8 channels. All audio should be submitted at 24-bit, 48 kilohertz, which is the one that everybody learns in basic sound. If you haven't taken basic sound, just make sure it's that. It's also included in the presets, so there shouldn't be too many issues with that. We do occasionally run into films that are submitted as 44.1 kilohertz or some stuff like that, so make sure it's that. Captioning was a huge thing at last screenings due to some oversights in our workflow, because Adobe applications got updated without us updating our presets. Captions are required for all films, especially given that we have the National Technical Institute for the Deaf at RIT. We do have interpreters for critiques, but we need captions on all the films. What we do is we receive all the films, we manually QC for captions, and what we'll do is, if we find that your film doesn't have captions, we're going to shine a spotlight at the screen for an interpreter to interpret any audio and any words. So make sure those are included, because otherwise we have to do that. Currently, there's burned-in captioning options in Premiere Pro. These are new within the past 2 years. So what you can do is you can go to Premiere Pro. There's a captioning workspace. You can type out all your captions, position them correctly, and there's a couple ways you can export them. We recommend you burn them in. And so at this moment in the labs, there are no presets for exporting. Typically, there are, and there will be. We're just working with CAD Tech to put them on there, and we're however many weeks out. So they'll be on there by the time you guys are getting ready to export. So you should be able to go select your preset. It'll say like 1920 by 1080, tier 1, or your DCP. If you're doing a DCP, it'll say tier 2, and you'll have to read out like exactly what format, how many sound tracks, stuff like that. It should automatically have captions selected on the export page. It's like, I forget how it is now. I think there's like 3 tabs. There's like files, then your project, then the export tab on the top left in Premiere Pro at least. You should be able to go to the export page, select your preset, make sure the captions dropdown is checked on. That will burn captions into your file and you should be good to submit. The other way to do it is you can turn on a sidecar file or an SRT, and what it does is exports all your caption text along with the time code that it occurs at, and you can add it in later. For tier 1 films, we recommend not doing that. For DCPs, we recommend either method as long as ultimately there are captions in there. Definitely before you submit through our submission page in SofaTube, check to make sure everything sounds okay, looks okay, and has captions. That's the biggest thing last year that kind of brought us down. We were able to find the problem and correct it probably by day 2, but we need everybody. We can't necessarily, we don't want to have to shine a big light at the screen. So make sure you submit it. It'll just wash it out. It looks terrible. For DCPs, like I said, you can export an SRT. For DCPs, since you guys are not exporting audio from Premiere Pro or DaVinci, you guys are just submitting that video file, you can either burn the captions into the video, or if you're planning on doing some festival submissions, sometimes they have different formats. So you can also export a clean video without captions. And then in our DCP software, which is DCP-O-Matic, you should be able to add captions through that SRT file. So just make sure when you're working in DCP-O-Matic, you can see the captions on there. There's also a DCP-O-Matic player, which normally you're not allowed. It's impossible to play a DCP on a laptop. The DCP-O-Matic player will let you see your film, so it's a good way to QC on your own time and also see if there's captions. And then we of course recommend QCing with FVASA because that is on the actual projector, so to make sure that works. Anybody have questions on captioning? I feel like that. All right. Let me move that for the people in here. But this is what you will see when you guys submit to SofaTube. So does everybody know SofaTube? Okay. SofaTube is, everybody should be able to log into that. sofatube.cad.rit.edu, I want to say. It's also on the FVASA website. Yeah. So it's a thing that all RIT students in the School of Film and Animation should be able to access. It contains all the films from previous years, as well as a submissions page. So I'll open it. I open SofaTube for submissions at 8 a.m. Like I think 2 or 3 weeks before. We'll get to the dates at the end. I think it's 2 weeks. But whatever the timeline is, I'll open SofaTube and I'll put out an email of how to submit on there. That's what I do every semester. You'll go there, you'll fill out a whole bunch of information, the director, like who's submitting, contact information, as well as upload your file to your server. So what you can see is up there is where it says Brad test.mp4, that's where you'd select your file. SofaTube will automatically run a test to make sure you guys are meeting the specifications. The biggest one that fails every semester is audio, so don't let your audio fail. If you do not have 7 check marks, it has not passed. If there's a thing in the bottom left that does not say passed, it did not pass. So make sure when you're looking at it, what those are the loudness norm. We have to hit -27 dBFS. That's the same one as basic sound for basic sound projects. What it basically is the average volume for your film has to be within ±2 of -27. So -29 to -25. Your peak cannot exceed -6. We recommend you don't let your peak exceed -6. That gives you, sometimes there's weird round off errors in the encoding of audio. Sometimes there's weird stuff. So if you make sure your audio peaks at -6, no, there won't be any problems. When we always look at all the files every year, and there's always somebody who has peaked at like +10, which is beyond clipping. It has clipped all the data from 0 to +10. So make sure that's not happening. Make sure it's stereo. Make sure it's an H.264 codec, not any of the other weird ones that we see. Resolution this is for everybody regardless of tier 1 or tier 2, should be submitting an H.264 1920 by 1080p file. That's the thing I was talking about earlier. And your frame rate should be 24 frames per second for DCPs, and any of the ones I showed on a previous slide for tier 1. So like 30, 29, 97, any of those. All right. Don't let that fail. If it fails, you can resubmit, and we'll be able to work with you at the screenings table to make sure we get the right one. Tier 2 workflows. This is more tier 2. So for the tier 2 people on watching this, we assume that you guys are because most of them are fictions and captions. We assume you're already through production or getting through it within the next couple weeks. How it works is you're going to create digital source master. That's what DSM stands for, digital source master files. And so let's say you're editing in Premiere, and coloring in DaVinci and mixing your sound in Pro Tools, just because those are the ones that we recommend for, those are the ones we offer in Magic at least. You'll do your edit on proxy files in Premiere Pro. You'll send your raw files to your colorist, or if you're coloring it yourself in the color mix theater, you'll export from DaVinci a picture digital source master that has no audio and is encoded with a couple of different standards. You can do a TIFF sequence, which is individual uncompressed frames, or you can do a DNxHR. It'll append an MOV file at the end of it. That's a JPEG 2000 encoded. So really high quality image sequences. Your audio is going to be exported as separate tracks. So if you're doing a DCP with stereo audio, you actually can export it with audio, but work with us on that. Send me an email. I usually get probably like 9 or 10 people a semester that email me. So if you need help with that, I'm more than happy and more than able to help you get the correct export for what you're trying to do at screenings. So if you're going to do a surround sound mix, make sure your tracks, those are all going to be mono audio tracks. Then within our app, DCP-O-Matic, you're going to select all those files and hit like jobs, make DCP. It'll create a DCP. It'll take a good amount of time, because especially if you're using a TIFF sequence, just because it's encoding all those uncompressed raw TIFF sequences. At that point, you should do a tier 2 QC in the theater with me. So you'll sign up for a time for that. I think I'll get into that in a couple slides. And you just get to see it, make sure the audio plays back correctly. If there's any adjustments you need to be made on our end, we're sometimes able to work with you on that. At which point you will then go back into Premiere, export your H.264 MP4 file, and bring that or submit that on SofaTube and bring that to the screening sign up. And that will let us, we get some metadata based on your submission that tells us it was a DCP and that we should use your DCP. So at that point, once you sign up, you should be good. We take it from there, and you should be able to sit in the theater and watch your beautiful masterpiece unfold on the screen. Creating the DCP, like I said, is a 2-step process and is not a single file. You'll get what it ultimately looks like is a big folder that has a pretty distinct naming convention that it handles the naming convention for you. But there's a digital source master for the picture and a bunch of them for the sound, depending on how much surround sound you want, whether it's 5 channels or 8. And that all becomes the DCP. Like I said, TIFF sequence or DNHR, make sure your captions option is turned on in either if you're burning in your captions, this is where you want to make sure your captions option is turned on. And if you're exporting as a sidecar file, make sure you go into DCP-O-Matic and upload that sidecar file and then QC it. If you're having trouble with this, and this is where the majority of captioning issues happened last semester, it was burned into the MP4 file that you submitted on SofaTube, but it wasn't for some reason in the DCP-O-Matic file. Sometimes there's just a weird check mark that needs to be selected within DCP-O-Matic. Sometimes something didn't get burned in from Premiere Pro, whatever the case may be. We just want to make sure that eventually by the time it's screened, there are captions on there. So work with us, work with me. I've been able to mess with it over the summer, and I think I know it well enough to be able to help anybody. There are lots of documentation, articles, and stuff that will tell you exactly what buttons and exactly what settings need to be pressed, and those are all on the FVASA.cad.rit.edu website under the documentation tab. So make sure you're following those, because I'm probably not going to go through every single button you have to click. Those are all listed out on those documents. Like I said, make sure your caption track is checked if using an SRT file. As of right now, we're working on making sure the DCP is sent to us automatically. There's been a couple issues with it, but it should be working by the time you guys are submitting DCPs. If not, that will be included in my email, in an email out to everybody. So you should be able to check a box that says upload to TMS, and we'll just automatically get that DCP. You still have to come sign up with your MP4 file, but we have your file at that point, and we can also QC once we have it there. Make sure you also keep a copy for yourself. They can get pretty large, especially when they're TIFF sequences, especially when they are long, like 15, 20 minutes. So make sure you also have enough space on your drives for them. I've seen anything from like, I've made like 500 megabyte DCPs, and I've seen like 200 gigabyte DCPs. So make sure, make sure you know approximately how much space it's going to be. I think in DCP-O-Matic, it might tell you approximately how big it's going to be. So just double check that and make sure you keep a copy. These are the dates for screenings and the very important deadlines that everybody has to meet. So I'll wait for photos. So like I was saying earlier, the SofaTube portal will open on Monday, November 27th at 8 a.m. That I usually send out an email either that day or at least that week saying that A, it has been opened, and B, here's the steps to submit everything. So you should, and as well as I'll reiterate all these dates as well. The amnesty deadline is December 6th at 10 p.m. That's the last Wednesday of the semester. And what amnesty means is if you submit before December 6th at 10 p.m., we will go in on our end, we will automatically QC your film for the correct picture specs and the correct audio levels and encoding. And we will let you know whether or not you passed the test. Most people that submit before the amnesty deadline do pass, but that being said, we do occasionally come into people who don't pass it. Sorry, let me go back because there's 2 dates that are not on the list. What's the date what's the weekend before the December 6th?
December 2nd and 3rd.
December 2nd and 3rd through December 9th and 10th will be quality check sessions. So I'll put out a Google Sheets and anybody can sign up for them. Those will be, you submit your file on, you send us your DCP or you send us your MP4 file. If you want to sign up, you want to see your film in the theater prior to the actual screening day, you can come in and watch it with us. Make sure the audio sounds good to you. Make sure the picture looks like it did on your laptop. And so there will be a bunch of dates and times. So please sign up for those. That being said, you can sign up even if you don't meet the amnesty deadline. You can still sign up to QC your film. That's totally fine. Just make sure you submit your film the night, like 11:59, the night before your screening time. Your QC session, your QC time. So like if you're planning on coming in on Saturday the 9th, make sure your film is done Friday the 8th. Screening signups. The general deadline is December 11th at 10 p.m. for SofaTube submissions. And the screening signups is December 11th from 7 to 10 p.m. For those of you who haven't been there in the past, what happens is downstairs across from the cage in Gannett, and right outside the FVASA office, Lily Snow and I will be sitting at the table, taking down your name, and that's where you're going to sign up for your time. So usually it's a pretty long line that gets started before 7 p.m. I think if you show up at like 6, you might be able to get a good spot, but for whatever reason, everybody likes to come early to guarantee their screening spots. So we do operate on a first come first serve basis for screenings times. That being said, if you have a final, we can work with you to make sure you get a screening time that on the correct day. So if you have a final on Friday at 10 to 11, and those are the only times that work, or if you have a final during the week and you send us an email, we'll make sure you get a spot outside of the times of your final so you can be there in person for your film. That being said, typically not a huge issue, and a lot of times we can do a little bit of massaging the schedule to make sure everybody fits in. That's always fun for us. Am I missing anything? Yeah, it'll be the 2 Saturdays before the deadline, 2 weekends. Make sure you sign up and bring your phone with your ticket submission. We take down your name, your film name, and the time that you want to go. And again, like I said, operate on a first come first serve. So make sure if you are I'm not recommending leaving before screenings is over because that's a terrible idea. But if you have a flight, we don't accommodate for flights leaving. So make sure you get in there early if that's something you can't change, because that's not a valid excuse on our end. Yeah, that's true. Snow was just bringing up, if you're graduating this semester, you can email us before 7 p.m. on the 11th. And you can pick whatever spot you want. That's just for graduating students. Yeah, and graduating this semester, not graduating in the spring. The first screening day will be December 14th, which is a Thursday. Typically they run 9 or 10. I think they started at 9.
9 or 10 a.m.
Yeah, depending on how many films, 9 or 10 a.m. And they typically go. They can go as late as 6 or 7, but typically in the fall it gets out a little bit earlier. So make sure you plan for that. You'll know your time as soon as we sign you up. We'll enter it into our screenings software, and you should get a confirmation email saying what time you have. Like I said, we'll also be offering QC sessions. Are there any questions so far? That might be it. All right. So fvasa.cad.rit.edu is our website. And if you go to the documentation tab on there, that's where all the information that I said, as well as information I didn't say, is going to be. The information I didn't say was like, I didn't go through every single place you had to like write your name down or I don't know, like every single step to get through SofaTube. Those are all on the FVASA website. And you can also email us at either the rit.favasa@gmail.com email or also favasa.cad.rit.edu. We got that email back because we lost it last semester. I think it's just if FVASA. I don't know.
It's just FVASA at RIT.
If okay, Snow will put it in the chat because I think I said it wrong. But yeah, okay. I think that's all. Yeah, I think that's all. Does anybody have any questions for their film specifically, or just all right? Anybody on Zoom? All right. Well, reach out to me if you have any questions. I know this is going to be a great. I'm really looking forward to a great screening season. I can't wait to see all the cool stuff that you guys are doing. And we'll see you next week. Same place, same time. And it'll also be recorded, and it'll be a little bit more in depth on stuff. So tell your friends to show up if they have films that they're submitting, and come again if you want to get a little bit more technical stuff. But again, it'll be recorded and put out to the Swift community. All right, I'm gonna see everyone.